Hello there, many thanks for joining us on Diaspora Live this beautiful, beautiful evening. Now, in a world where influence is often defined by political office or economic power, some voices emerge from unexpected places, shaped not just by privilege, but by discipline, resilience, and lived experiences. My guest today is one of such voices. He comes from a place of, as a professional boxer based in Wisconsin, United States, Mr. Enobong Umohette, widely known as the Nigerian Gentleman, has built a reputation in the ring defined by strength, strategy, and determination. But beyond these titles and victories lies a man deeply connected to his roots, passionate about governance, and committed to the future of Akwa Ibom State and Nigeria at large. As a member of the Nigerian in diaspora, he represents a growing class of global citizens who are not just excelling abroad, but are actively engaging. And today, that is what we'll be talking about, how diaspora influence can determine governance here in the country. Well, welcome once again to Joy Asonya Live. We'll go for a very short break. When we return, we'll get into that conversation and discuss more about governance, especially when you juxtapose what's going on in the country and in other parts of the world, and how diaspora influence above everything can determine good governance. Now, today's conversation goes beyond sport. It explores how discipline of the ring can shape leadership, how diaspora voices also can influence governance, and what the future holds for a nation brimming with potential, a nation just such as Nigeria. Mr. Umohette, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much for having me on the program.
For those who do not know, why are you referred to as the Nigerian Gentleman? That's the one thing I want to know first. What does it represent, both outside and in the ring?
Well, thank you for that very interesting observation. So, the Nigerian Gentleman is my boxing alias and really truly describes my character. So, in a sport that is as rigorous and as dangerous as professional boxing, for the most part, I don't look it facially because I don't have any scars. I don't have visible bruises, cuts, and stitches that would make me look scary. So, and I'm also approximately 6 feet in height or 5'11", depending on how I stand. And that is considered small for a heavyweight. A heavyweight is usually an average height of about 6'3" or 6'4". So, beside my peers, I am small, but the name is unassuming because they will assume that I'm as soft as I look for the most part, but that would be a distraction. So the name is a distraction, but in personality, that's who I am. I'm a gentleman, raised well, conservative in values and liberal to a great extent, but I embody the traditional Nigerian, African, and Akwa Ibom values, which evolves around respect, culture, and decency. So that's my personality.
That's
Is
why
to
you're the
have.
Nigerian Gentleman. I mean, I would love to follow that trend of conversation because you are in the US at the moment, where I would say you're a white man in a black skin. A lot of people find that insulting. It's a good thing you smiled. Now, your journey is in boxing. Your journey in boxing has shown resilience and a lot of comebacks, of course. So how has that shaped your worldview? I mean, you're still holding on to that Africanness and that Pan-Africanness that is showing. However, you are a world citizen. How has that shaped everything for you?
Yes, it has. It has shaped my worldview, indeed, and essentially espouses my struggles and my challenges, and how I have converted it into inspiration for others. As you've followed my career closely and from available data, which you know, I at some point retired. You know, I've had ups and downs and left the ring. And within the past few years, after my most recent retirement, I went from 230 pounds to over 400 pounds. I went from looking like an athlete to being morbidly obese and at the verge of death. So reinventing myself by going back to the sports, I was able to reverse what was a very lethal downward slope in health. And I have been able to prove that once there is a will, given the right environment and circumstances, there will always be a way. So I was able to reverse what would have been a dangerous trajectory to my death because I became grossly overweight. But I was able to turn that around, reduce the weight, get back into fitness, and actually perform at a level, an optimal physiological level that I last attained over 2 decades ago. Meaning that anyone can actually turn circumstances around, whether it's in health, whether it's in finance, whether it's in career, or whether it's in life generally. And these are the great comeback stories that we've seen the world over, even in other countries. China was the poorest country in the world. Now China is the world's only mega power. Russia was a completely failed state after the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 90s, but look at Russia today. So it's the same comeback story of resilience that once there is a will, a determination, and the right circumstances, anyone can turn around anything, and it's never too late.
Absolutely. That's very inspiring. However, at this stage, what does success even mean to you? Having had your several comebacks and having enjoyed several successes, I don't want to look at the failure because that, as you have said, has defined who you are. What is success to you at the moment?
Success to me is how much I can inspire. Well, professional boxing, especially at the heavyweight class, is very lucrative. You know, you could have this one fight that would pay the salary of many well-trained doctors for 5 years in just 3 minutes or 36 minutes if you do a full turnaround fight. But all through my career as a professional, there was something I wasn't able to achieve in the first phase of the career. This is the last phase. I'm on my way out. But one of those things, career wise, was being a championship level fighter. And I'll tell you what a championship level fighter is. A championship level fighter is a fighter who has fought the full 12 rounds. In the first phase of the career, I didn't do that. But the second phase of the career, that's what I'm edging for. And once I can do that once or twice or a couple of times, I would believe career-wise, I would have achieved at least that level as a championship level fighter, world championship level fighter, before I finally say goodbye. But essentially, success for me is how much I can inspire people around me and around the world through my career, my life in the ring and outside the ring.
Wow. I wish you luck in that. I'll be here cheering for you. From all of us from Nigeria, you always make us proud. But let's get into the diaspora influence and national connection. So you're living in the U.S. So how has the perspective on Nigeria changed? How, particularly in governance, how do you look at us when you follow the stories that happened? Some of them are very daringly unpatriotic, I may say. Some others, little successes here and there. But you are living in a place where institutions are held by the need to bring good governance. How do you look at us?
Well, I thank you very much for that question. That's an interesting question, and it's a question where all Nigerians in diaspora are confronted with on a daily basis. Some are by far detached and disconnected from the reality of Nigeria, but some are very, very connected with the daily life and reality in Nigeria, as I am. So, first thing is being in the diaspora. I have to first of all be a Nigerian who is an ambassador who projects our country favorably, because the narrative that has been created about Nigeria is a stereotype. And this stereotype only shows and magnifies the negative aspects of Nigeria. Nigeria is still a beautiful country with enormous potential. So I haven't looked at us Nigerians at the home front any negatively than I would when I was living in Nigeria. Has there been improvement in certain areas? Yes, there has been. Are there areas where we need improvements to work on in terms of governance, in terms of policy, in terms of infrastructure? Yes, yes, there are quite a number of areas. So the problems that Nigeria faces are not just peculiar to Nigeria. They other African countries do undergo such challenges, and the predominant stereotype and stigma and the narrative created about Nigeria is corruption. There is corruption everywhere. Even in the United States of America, there is astronomical corruption. In the West, in developed countries, there is corruption. So it hasn't made me change my view. I'm more first an ambassador projecting the positive sides of Nigeria, and there is improvement and there is need for further improvement in so many areas.
Wow, that's very good to admit. I mean, from back here, very often you hear Nigerians say, oh, this would never happen in the West. Oh, civilized societies would never have this. I was having a conversation earlier and I told someone, I was in the US some time ago when the president disbanded ABC, you know, and I could not for the life of me believe it. If this happened in Nigeria, we would go to town, we would protest and all of that. So I'm happy you said that, how of course, there's corruption everywhere. The issues we are facing are not just peculiar to ours. However, you also mentioned that there's always room for change. If you have to pick on the challenges that the governance structure is facing right now in Nigeria, not just governance right here, but also the perception, civilian perception, or citizens' perception rather, of what governance should be. What would it be? Not just Akwa Ibom, I know you're very particular about the governance structure in Akwa Ibom, but across Nigeria.
So my speaking from the perspective of a Nigerian, my perception wouldn't be any different from the perception of the ordinary Nigerian, who, first of all, is afraid of the government, does not trust the government, and relies on the government for everything, or believes the government must provide everything. So that is a shared perspective based on being a Nigerian, whether living here or living there. And in areas where I see that the government is doing well, I believe they are making great strides, especially in the area of digital infrastructure, digital technology. There is great strides there, and legislature too is moving along, modern current trends globally to, increase our presence in the global stage in many regards. And so Nigeria does have great potential, facing quite a lot of challenges, as a government and as a people. So people are suspicious of the government and rely on the government for everything. And essentially, we have a structure that is, I believe, in my view, is holding Nigeria back. And I share the same view as my father and mentor, His Excellency Governor Victor Atta, and many who are like him in the notion that we really need structure federalism to meet the aspirations of the ordinary Nigerian people. Without that, we'll be running around in circles and we will not achieve the nation statehood that would work for all Nigerians.
Recently, there seems to be a wave of interest from some of you in diaspora. Is there a policy, is there some direction, leadership direction that's giving you that confidence to say, I must contribute to what's going on, I must participate in what's going on? Is it exciting for some of us here when we need these diverse voices from you in diaspora? What is tweaking that change? What's getting us there? And how much more can we influence diaspora participation?
Thank you for that observation. So And Nigerians in diaspora are in two categories. The first category are the ones who are completely exasperated. They've given up hope that there'll be any change in Nigeria because they've lived decades in foreign environments where there's functional infrastructure, there is participatory governance, and government is accountable, and they've completely given up hope. But I'll give you some data. I'll give you some data from the Nigerian Central Bank. According to the Nigerian CBN, the diaspora community invests in an annual outlook a total of 20 to 21 billion dollars annually. That is the foreign direct remittance into the Nigerian economy. Now that amount is $4 billion more than the entire federation allocation to all the 36 states of the federation, meaning we are directly contributing into the Nigerian economy more than even all the states in the federation. According to the Federal Ministry of Finance, the monthly allocation to the states from the federal government, without VAT and all that, is about 2 trillion monthly. So that's 24 trillion annually. That is still just $17 billion. So Nigerians in the diaspora are heavily invested in the economy of Nigeria through remittance to support friends, to support family, to support investments. So there is, and that continues to increase. Unfortunately, there is economic hardship. There is a disparity in economic matrix between the two societies, but the involvement, financial involvement and investment from the diaspora, by far exceeds what the 36 states make. So that means we will always be remitting into the Nigerian economy. So we are invested, and this is a lifetime phenomenon that wouldn't change. Now, the interest in the diaspora would be the interest that may be lacking a little bit is in the governance of Nigeria, political involvement, and being able to influence or have more participation of the diaspora in the political landscape in Nigeria. Now, that is where there is a little need for more encouragement. But if it's the financial aspect, that doesn't change.
Well, like you said, we have been here almost spoiled because we keep depending on these diaspora remittances. In one vein, I remember at the beginning of the current administration, the president went all over engaging Nigerians in diaspora just so that these remittances don't end. We recognize how important it is to our economy. We do. But in the same vein, we say we have too many young people who want to leave the country. So how do we marry it? There's the brain drain that's happening, and we are enjoying remittances from that brain drain. You have to balance it for me, because sometimes I feel like we're talking from both sides of the mouth.
It's true. I agree with you that it is quite the dichotomy of perspectives, where in one vein where, hey, let's make things better. In the other vein, we're in a hurry to run out. Let's identify just at least one area of the Nigerian economy and the Nigerian society that can be the fulcrum and the base for holistic economic development, and that is the area of energy. As you are aware, I'm very connected to the socio-political environment in Nigeria, happenings on a daily basis, and there is a candidate, a fine young gentleman who is aspiring to run for office, to run for the office of governor of Akwa Ibom State. His name is Akwa Michael Bush. He's a fine gentleman, but intellectually he's a broadcasting icon. and I've known and heard about him, and I'm a personal friend. So there is something the gentleman said as the base of his platform, which is offering and providing 24 hours of electricity. He would be the only candidate in my modern lifetime, that would be campaigning or stating that he wants to run for office to provide uninterrupted electricity supply. Now, electricity and power and energy, that is actually the missing link to economic development. That's the first person who's ever said, this is what I want to bring to the table. I want to provide my state with unlimited power supply, because once you have electricity, that's basically the difference between Nigeria at home and diaspora and the foreign countries.
Exactly.
It's 24, 24
Exactly.
hours electricity. Once you have electricity, you have manufacturing, you have industry, you have security, you have the architecture for technological development, for innovation, for science, for even security, surveillance, tracking. All sorts of things happen when there is 24 hours of electricity. So, is there a reason? I believe there is a deliberate reason why Nigeria doesn't have 24 hours of electricity. I believe there is a conspiracy and a deliberate reason why we don't. Because once we do, it means the economy and the society will change. It means poverty will reduce. And when poverty will reduce, the political elite cannot use and abuse the electorate. Nigeria will become a diaspora where the governor or the government will be beholden to the citizens and not the citizens beholden to the government. So the primary difference is that energy is the sector that can turn things around. And there is a fine young man who is aspiring to be a governor, and he's doing that on the strength of offering that this is what he wants to bring to the table. So
You
energy
seem
is key.
right. You seem very confident that he would deliver. I mean, we've had several other politicians. I know Michael Bush as well. He's a senior colleague, and so I may have my bias. However, to be objective here on the show, my question will now be: we've heard this before. A lot of people and candidates who come up and tell you, you know what, I have good intentions, and you look them dead in the eye, and they look you and they tell you, oh yes, this is what I want to deliver on. What makes Michael Bush different? What's giving you this confidence? I mean, all the way from the United States.
Well, I'm just responding to his statement and his aspiration. He is aspiring to run for office, and he's pledging that this will be his focus. The primary focus, that's it. The main thing he's saying as his source and the basis of his aspiration is providing 24 hours of electricity in Akwa Ibom State. Now, let's look at Akwa Ibom State as a model at the national level. Let's look at Akwa Ibom State. From 1999, we've had three governors. We had His Excellency Governor Victor Atta, we had His Excellency Governor Gosolo Pabio, we had His Excellency Governor Udom Emmanuel, and now we have His Excellency Governor Moino PhD. What has been consistent with these four amazing leaders is that they have continued to build on the groundwork and the platform that was laid, the foundation that was laid by His Excellency Governor Victor Atta in the establishment of, first, an independent power plant, second, very aggressive national push for the states to be able to have the statutory right to distribute power. So it's been a slow, steady, but consistent progress towards being able to distribute power. Under the previous federal statute, only the federal government of Nigeria could distribute power. You could generate the power, but only the federal government could distribute it. But Akwa Ibom State as a module has had four fantastic leaders, including the current one, who have continued on the foundation laid by His Excellency Governor Victor Atta, up to a point where we now have enabling statute that allows the states to some extent distribute the power. So if an individual is coming in to say, hey, this is what I want to do, or the incumbent is going to expand and increase our distribution capacity, our generation capacity, then it could be possible to have 24 hours electricity. I saw it in my lifetime. I was born in the 70s. In 1980 of Nigeria, of Akwa Ibom State, we had 24 hours electricity. In 10 minutes of dialing 999, an ambulance would show up at your house and a police dispatch vehicle would show up at your house in Nigeria of 1980. So is it impossible? It is not impossible. And now we have all sorts of diversification of energy generation. We've gone beyond hydroelectric, hydrothermal, to other areas, to solar energy, to wind energy, to nuclear energy. So there is a lot of even biodegradable energy. So there is a lot of diversification. There's a lot of growth. So we are moving towards where we can actually have sustainable energy and we can return to what we used to know maybe 40 years ago. The energy grid of the federal government of Nigeria has had challenges because Nigeria does have a challenge with maintenance culture. You cannot assume that if you had, for instance, an energy grid that could hold just maybe, let's use an example, 10,000 megawatts of power in 1980, that infrastructure would be able to hold a demand for 20,000, 30,000, 40,000, or even 100,000 megawatts of power requirement. So Nigeria has had the challenge of, at the federal level, of poor maintenance culture. But we've moved and evolved steadily to a point where there is enough technical know-how, there is enough scientific know-how. Now perhaps it is the political will to move to the next level of restoring 24-hour electricity, at least at the microcosm of a state. So Akwa Ibom State as a module, I believe, is way ahead of the curve than the 36 states by the fortune of the great administrators we've had, 4 excellent governors, and the aspiration of new young politicians who are coming into the fray.
Wow. That's very bold, and I appreciate it, of course, but it's time to go for a short break. Still, we have so much more to discussing how diaspora influence can better the future of governance in Nigeria. Mr. Enobong Umohette, right here with us, discussing diaspora influence and contributions towards the future of governance in Nigeria. Mr. Umohette, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you so much for staying back. So the conversation was getting interesting. You're talking about, of course, discussing Akwa Ibom State and the many possibilities and potentials of the state. And you went to a part where a lot of us, I'm from Cross River State, so yeah, you touched a nerve, where you talked about how beautiful Akwa Ibom is, maybe better than other parts of the country. But we're not going to follow that thought trend. Let's get to the part where a lot of diasporans complain about. Elections are right by the corner. We're hoping that by now we would have a direction as to how best diasporans can participate in the electioneering process without just the social media participation that we often see. Does it concern you that at this point in our democratic journey, we've not gotten to a point where diasporans can click a button and vote the representative of their choice?
Yes, Joy, you are absolutely correct that we in the diaspora are unfortunately not participating in the process as voters. And that, I believe there is, in 2024, there was the diaspora voting bill, which from what I understand, has passed the second reading. And I am pretty skeptical about the diaspora voting bill ultimately being passed into law. And as we know how government works, where government sets out a policy to achieve certain objectives, they will achieve those objectives,
Of course.
irrespective of the will of the citizens, especially in the context of Nigeria and Africa. So there is a bill that has passed the second reading, and I don't know if that bill will be actualized because we do have a lot more challenges than we can admit. First of all, the electoral integrity. Recently, as recently as just some months ago, there was an effort to amend section, I believe, section 62, subsection 2, and section 60, subsections 3 and 5 of the Nigerian Constitution to allow for real-time transmission of election results from the polling stations. That amendment effort failed. And in the wisdom of the judiciary, the wisdom of the legislature,
Legislators.
there's a legislature. The legislature believe that under the current infrastructural reality of Nigeria, that it may not be practicable to ensure real-time data transmission from polling stations. And they cited uh, energy, they cited electricity, they cited access to internet, they cited internet security. These are all valid reasons. So where we have foundational problems that limit election integrity, and there are lots of loopholes in not just the infrastructure of the electoral process, but in the environment, it becomes foolhardy to assume that we who are in diaspora, who will need technology, electronic platforms and infrastructure, and the highest level of infrastructural security to participate remotely. It's foolhardy to assume that our participation remotely will be guaranteed where there are foundational problems. So we are saddened, and we continue to advocate that we should be able to have this level of direct participation in the electoral process. But foundationally, Nigeria is not ready, and I do not believe that the ruling class will move towards the direction of actualizing that. So it is the ruling elite to ensure that this foundational infrastructure is non-functional at best or has no integrity, because then they can control the electioneering process. So unfortunately, we're not there, and I don't believe we're going to get there soon in our lifetime, but I'm hopeful that we will.
Wow. You sounded very bleak right there. You know, and I know that it's not rocket science. These technologies do exist, and I also questioned when I saw what our legislators were saying at the time. Before 2023 elections, general elections, INEC had actually released data that it was only about 90%, only 10% or 12% rather, only 87% rather, I'm mixing it up now. 87% had internet penetration, had network penetration. Only 13% lacked internet penetration. And my question was, if we have only 13% that needed this internet penetration to ensure transparency, accountability, and integrity in our electoral process, why are we not looking into the infrastructure of, opening up the dragnet for just the 13%? That shouldn't be too much to achieve. I thought so as well. But I was thinking you would say that maybe it's not before 2027, but you said it may not be in our lifetime. That's how bleak it sounds at the moment. But is there pressures? Can the diaspora community galvanize and bring themselves together to pressure government? Because the right thing, that, like you said earlier, is beginning to look like a conspiracy theory. If we are bent on doing the right thing to be perceived as a country that's ready, can the diaspora community pressure government? Are you even interested, or you are now despondent to say, you know what, this is beyond us? And that is unfortunately where we are beginning to see the young energies in Nigeria drift to, reflective in the just concluded area council elections that happened. We had only 20% of citizens come out for elections. I did a report, and every single person I asked would always tell you, I mean, these guys already know who would emerge. Here you are in the same vein, supporting a candidate you believe has the blueprint, everything it will take to get Akwa Ibom State to become to once again blossom. That's in the person of Michael Bush, of course. However, make it make sense. You are despondent. You do not believe in the electoral integrity of Nigeria, and yet you believe a candidate will win. If you are so optimistic about it, how then is your candidate going to emerge?
Well, just for clarification, I am stuck in between a rock and a hard place, and I'll tell you why. Like I said, in my little chronology of Akwa Ibom State as a role model in the area of energy production, we have had 4 amazing and fantastic governors, from His Excellency Governor Victor Otta, 1999 to 2007, down to the current incumbent, His Excellency Governor Umohette, PhD. My candidate in that election is...
None of whom followed through with the power plants that Victor Otta started. We were looking at Akwa Ibom State as the pilot state that would have that independent power supply, that power plant that will give the supply. Of course, the distribution issue is a clause in the Constitution, but however, none of those governors followed through, and yet you call them amazing governors.
So the truth is, like I said, it's a process. In the past, only the federal government could distribute power. You could generate the power, but the federal government had to distribute it. It took the work of the 4 governors, stage after stage after stage, to where we are, where we have enabling statute that allows for some distribution at the level of state. So, interestingly, my candidate in this election is the incumbent governor, because he has followed the path. Some things don't happen overnight. But also, as a personal friend, Michael Bush is the individual who is saying, as a platform, as a policy objective, that this is what he wants to do. He wants to focus on providing 24 hours of electricity to the state. The incumbent governor is taking steps to do the same thing. Okay, he's already the governor. He's handling 50,000 things at the same time. So, interestingly, my candidate in that election is the incumbent governor, because I believe he's doing well. I believe he's doing well. So I'm caught in between a rock and a hard place, where I have a personal friend who said something very, very amazing: policy focused 24 hours electricity. And I also have a governor I endorse as a candidate who I will still endorse and support for his second term run. But anyway, let's get back to the issue of diaspora. I believe the question was in regards to diaspora participation in the electoral process. So, if you've you know a little bit about my background, I was at some level involved in government, and I believe that the best way that our citizens in diaspora can create an impact is to ensure that this 20 to 21 billion dollars of foreign direct annual remittance is to their friends, relatives, and social circles to vote for candidates that will affect change. Nigeria as a whole has two, in my view, two groups of political political entities: establishment and revolutionaries. The establishment are the generational politicians who want the elite to stay in power. And to stay in power means they have to weaponize energy, they have to weaponize access to governance, they have to weaponize even economic indices like poverty. When a society is impoverished, it's easy to create criminals, it's easy to create political thugs, it's easy to offer 3,000 naira to an individual to sell their voter's card. So there is a class I call the establishment, generational political class who want to keep Nigeria as it is for their personal benefit. Now there is the revolutionaries. The revolutionaries are the ones who come in and say, "Hey, look, you know what? We're going to do radical things. We're going to do things differently for the good of the people." And they exist everywhere. In every state in the federation, they exist. So I believe that influence to the ruling class and the government will not be as productive as that $21 billion going to individuals or going to citizens who would vote in revolutionaries that will create change. So let us be the change we want to see. If we cannot vote, let our $21 billion in remittance go to our citizens who would be directed to vote for individuals who are, number one, doing well, or number two, who will do things differently. That's where our strength is. And I believe that is a strength that we should capitalize on. Or if we have candidates, whether running as councillor, running as chairman local government, running as governor, running as senator or state legislature or federal legislature, let our $21 billion be remitted to not just citizens, but to support individuals who want to come in and do things differently and not be a part of the establishment that will keep things status quo. So meetings, influence, peer pressure on government, it's interesting. It's good for, public relations effect, but there is an establishment in Nigeria that has been around and has survived how many decades of our limited existence, and this ruling elite want things to stay the way they are. Little increments, 2 steps forward, 3 steps backward, because they are the only ones who, for the most part, benefit. Has Nigeria been great and good to several individuals? Yes. And Nigeria has produced the greatest talents in every sphere of life all over the world. So our strength is in that our 20, because that $21 billion is $4 billion more than all the states in the federation receive. So if you're sending $5, $10 home, tell your relatives, there is this governor, there's this chairman who's doing well. This is where you should put your vote. Or there's this individual who's campaigning, he will do something different. This is where you should put your vote. Or if there are candidates who are running for office who you believe will do things differently, send those your $5 and $10 to them. That is where we can make an impact, because if we can produce a ruling class or people in governance in position of authority who can effect change, who are revolutionaries, then slowly we'll be able to start our journey back to where we were, 40 years ago.
Of Mr. Umohette on these issues. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. If you can hear me, I would like you to just tell us in a sentence. We really are run out of time. If you had an opportunity to sit across Nigerian leaders, what would be the central message to them that you think would have a ripple effect on better governance?
In one sentence, I'll tell our distinguished leaders that our constitution is flawed and we should go back to the drawing board of where legends like His Excellency Governor Victor Atta have articulated over the past decades that resource control is the way forward. And if we must be a sustainable corporate entity in Nigeria and hold this federation together, that is where we need to go. And that is the solution to getting us back on track to be a successful nation state going down the future for our generations to come. Resource control through federalism, that's the solution to first address Nigeria's problems as a corporate entity.
Thank you so much for your time. I've had a wonderful time having this conversation from your personal experiences, your personal life to governance in Nigeria. Thank you. We'll be calling on you subsequently to intermittently talk about our country and from your vantage point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy. It was my pleasure.
Yeah. Joy Asoye live show right here. We will leave you with the message that governance depends on you and I. We have to participate. We have to do all we can, no matter where you are. And it was good to have the thoughts of Mr. Enobong Umohette, who from Diaspora is keeping tabs with what's going on. It was sweet to hear him talk with statistics and data, what's happening in Nigeria, and that is really inspiring. Until next time, when I come your way, do have yourself a wonderful rest of the day.